our session. Welcome to the hybrid panel. We're so delighted to see each one of you today. Hope you had a great morning, and we have a lot of fun action planned this afternoon. Our panel moderator is a 24-year member of Toastmasters. She serves as club president of the past district governors, District Directors Club 407, and District 100. Her home club is Mattel Toastmasters in District 1, where she served as a district governor and led the district to select distinguished number 9 in the world. Please welcome 3-time distinguished Toastmaster, past district governor, Giovanna DeTore. Welcome.
Happy afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We're so glad that you could be here. If you're in the, Southern California, West Coast area, this is just after lunch. So this is probably people's least favorite time to be the speaker after people have had a full morning and lunch, and then they're going to be ramping up for their nap. So we'll make technology as riveting as we possibly can. But as we get started, I'm curious to know, and you can just pop in the chat, maybe we'll take one share, why you chose to come to this session. Are you already hybrid and you're looking for some new tips, or you're struggling with some things? Are you considering going hybrid, so you're trying to get ahead of the game? Are you already hybrid and you hate it and you're hoping for a last-ditch effort that might convince you to stay? Just curious about, so this will help our panelists kind of customize what they are planning to share based on our intimate group here. Already hybrid, looking for some tips. Awesome, already, good deal. Fear of contests, got it. So just to set expectation, we're probably not going to go super into detail for contests per se, but we do have some tips as far as setup in general that you might be able to take away. All right, not planning hybrid, very anxious to do it. We got a lot of info for you. So let's get started. If you're not familiar with the past District Governors and Directors Club, affectionately known as Club 407, which is formerly a Founders District, now in District 100, it's a club that comprises of past district governors and directors, current past region advisors, past international directors, and members of the executive committee, including a past international president, as well as current trio members. And the entire club's reason for being is to support current trio members in their leadership journey, as well as their quest to become Smedley distinguished. And so it's a highly specialized club with a very niche group. And so we got to go hybrid for the first time, and we're going to share our journey. And so we thank Kathy Hughes. I don't see her on with us. That's cool. It's fine. I'll let her know later. A little bit about why is my screen moving all around. I love technology. Every moment is a chance to learn or not. So let's get started with our piece. Let me bring up screen share if it's deciding to work well with others in the sandbox. Here we go. So we'll give a little bit of an overview so you can you know what to expect for today. So we'll talk a little bit about deciding to go hybrid and some of the decisions and some of the things you might want to consider along the way. We have Ruchit is going to talk a little bit about the equipment and connectivity. I find that that's where most people tend to have questions, is about what equipment we're going to need. But believe it or not, there's a whole lot more. And that's going to lead us into logistics. Darren is going to talk a little bit about, hey, we have this equipment now and we have this connectivity. What do we do with it? Where do we put it? How do we test it? How do we plan for the meeting? And now that I have those things in place, Julie's going to walk us through now, how do I put that meeting together? Because it's really critical to know, are the people going to be hybrid in person? Are they going to be remote? Because that can definitely have an impact on the experience. And then we'll take it home with Christine, who's going to talk with us a little bit about, now that I have all those things in place, how do I go execute it? What is actually going to happen during that meeting experience, especially the first one. And so we hope to give you a whole 360 view, not necessarily the niche, just the equipment that I think we get the most questions on, but there really are a lot of elements that go into the planning. So we'll start with deciding to go hybrid. And let's build our infographic together. So when 407 first embarked on this journey, we have 41 members, and each has a different thought on going hybrid. Some want to stay 100% online. There's a very few percentage. Some are all for hybrid, and some are, let's go back to the way we were, 100% in person. And so you can imagine what's happening in the world. We're not any one of those things just all the time. And so I told you what the club is all about. And so if we're there to help the leaders have to have their finger on the pulse of what's happening. And if there are a lot of clubs going hybrid, if there are some online, if there are some in person, we need to be able to be prepared for each of those scenarios. So the first thing you want to know is, where our club members stand on hybrid? What is the likelihood that they'll attend? Big lesson learned for us. Many people felt, yes, you should go hybrid. Doesn't mean I'm going to come in person, but you should offer it. And we have a good, probably 10% of our members who are not within driving distance of our venue, but they thought we should offer it for those who want the opportunity. So you kind of offer people a buffet to choose from, but not always realistic. So really know, what is the likelihood they'll attend? What is the likelihood of them coming every meeting in person versus once in a while in person? That can have an impact. How far are they willing to drive? Before the pandemic, we had members were driving from San Diego, which is a good 2-hour drive from Orange County, all the way from Santa Clarita and Palmdale, which is another probably 1.5-hour drive away, and everywhere in between, because it was that valuable of an experience in a meeting to learn and to connect and network with the people that were there. But 2.5 years being in lockdown, more or less, people's lifestyles changed. They weren't as willing to drive because they acclimated to a different lifestyle. So get to understand how willing people are to drive and how far and how often to make the drive, especially as here in the US in particular, I can at least speak to that. Gas prices are not user-friendly these days. The last piece you really want to look at is, how often do we want to have that hybrid experience? How often does your club meet? So if it's monthly, is it once in person a month that we're going to do it? Is it once a quarter? Is it all the time? You have to talk with your members, and your members need to vote on it. It is not an executive committee decision solo. You do need to have your members decide what your format will be. As we move into commitment, we're going to take a look at location. Only if I can move my screen. So depending on where you met before the pandemic came about, may not necessarily be where you can go back to. We've heard many stories of closures, places that don't necessarily support having a hybrid situation. So you want to take a look at, where are we going next? And does it align still with the brand of your club? If you are known as professional talkers, and then you're going to go meet, I don't know, in a back alley somewhere because you can get the free Wi-Fi off of someone's house, I don't recommend it, but if it works for you, have at it. It may not necessarily be congruent with the brand you're looking to have. So don't overlook that those pieces still exist. But where will you meet? What requirements that you'll need? So that will, Ruchin is going to talk a lot about that particular piece, but does the venue have it? And do you get it for free? If you're a corporate club, you may have some sophisticated access to some sophisticated equipment, whereas those who might meet in a community center or a hotel, at a restaurant, may not have that. So keep that in mind. And if you do you have to purchase equipment? Do you have to pay for fees? Do you have to pay for access to Wi-Fi? In the room, is there a time limit on the Wi-Fi? Will it have multiple users? We have 18 people that come regularly in person. Not all are on the Wi-Fi, but we need to know what is the capacity should we all be on the Wi-Fi and have our laptops, our phones, whatever devices. So pay really close attention to where you are going and does it meet the requirements for what you'll need for hybrid. Our next piece is financials and kind of coincides with the location we just talked about. So will your dues increase as a result if you have to move locations? If you're going to purchase equipment, if you can't get it donated or sponsored, how will you do that? Will you do some type of fundraiser with an opportunity drawing where you can get those funds in? Will you ask for a one-time fee? Will you vote on it? What's really the impact? If you go to a place where you're meeting in person and the dues increase and you have folks who cannot come, like if Mark Laverne, I know it's on his horizon to join Club 407, who is physically not going to be there, how much of a dues increase does he want to contribute to if it has to do with the location that he isn't going to be able to come to? But we need the equipment in order to make sure that he has a valuable experience. So think about all those places, those little nooks and crannies. And the last piece is the video service. Is Zoom the best one? And do I need to pay for the account? How much do we rely on someone else's free account in the club? Because it's free to us, they might be paying it, but what if they aren't there? So really look at all the nuances that it takes to put that in before going hybrid. And the last piece is change management. We'd like to think it's as linear as that previous slide that I showed you that just goes from topic to topic to topic. But as humans and people, we know that's not the case. Really stick with your members as you onboard into a new environment. Not everyone will welcome it wholeheartedly. Some will. We want them to be the ambassadors. But also as you ramp up, there could be a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. So in the case of 407, we meet at a hotel. We have a minimum requirement that we need to give the hotel of 18 people to ensure that we get the discount rate because we have dinner. Everything else to us is free. The space, the equipment, the technology, all of that is free to us, but we do pay for the dinner. And so to ensure that, there is still quite a bit of work that we do behind the scenes, checking in with the members. Are you coming? Make sure you RSVP and pay by the early deadline so you can get the discount rate, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's going to take a few months. I said earlier, we acclimated for the last 2.5 years to a different lifestyle, a different mindset. Our schedules are different. We were able to go to 8 meetings back to back to back, never get in our car, probably still be in our PJs from the waist down. And now I've got to factor in from my house, it's about an hour drive to get to the meeting. So there's still a lot of pieces that change management, getting people to come along, and it's all okay. It's really all okay. But it underscores the need to make sure that your executive committee is on board, that they are part of the process, that they know their role and responsibility in making this happen and helping connect with the different members. So that's a crash course in the first part of deciding to go. So let's get into our next speaker, and I'm going to take off our screen share because we're going to move into the equipment and logistics, or actually equipment and connectivity, I should say. We split that piece. So let's hear from Ruchit, who is a frequent guest at Club 407. Also, shameless plug, hope to be a member soon. And he played a crucial part in getting prepared for the meeting because of his background in technology and the equipment piece. And so he was one of the persons that we really heavily relied on early on to help us with those pieces. And so he'll cover that. And professionally, he is a principal cybersecurity architect. So we had the perfect candidate help us. So Ruchin, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? See my screen okay? Just give me a thumbs up. Okay, perfect. Now, now we're talking about the equipment and setup, and for hybrid meetings, it's really easy. I tell all my clubs that you can go hybrid for as low as $200. We're talking financials. I took my club, Jewel City 29, into a hybrid setup more than 11 months ago, and I have helped other clubs as well. Now, we love hybrid work, but it's not without its challenges. So you have to bridge the gap between the remote and in-person attendees, and that's where hybrid comes in. So let's look at the connectivity. Room size. Now, room size is really important because you will need to know how much room you need to cover. If your room size is big, then you have to get a bigger webcam. You have to find out what are the access points, what are the dead zones or areas in your room that doesn't have any Wi-Fi connectivity or doesn't have low cell phone connectivity. You
Tim,
have
can I stop you for 1 second? Because all I see on the screen is probably your second display. And if you're displaying anything, no one can see it.
How about now?
You can see it. It's in presentation mode.
Okay. So just stop me if I run into any more issues, okay?
All right,
Well,
thanks.
your recording controls are now prominent on top of the slide.
But you can see the slide deck, right?
It's in
I-
presentation mode. It's in the wrong mode.
Yeah,
We're not seeing a slideshow.
okay, that's better, but whoops, we lost it again.
Okay. I think I know what the issue was.
Okay,
We
that's
go.
good.
This is great. Thank you.
So I have 4 screens. So 2 of my got the same paper, same wallpaper, and I shared the wrong one. Yeah, so you have to look at the dead zones. And again, you didn't miss anything, any graphics, so we are okay. And then you also have to look at find a good spot so that you can put your cell phone in case your Wi-Fi goes down or your LAN goes down. That has happened to us on quite few occasions. So you should ensure that your cell phone can get good connectivity. You also have to figure out what's the network type that you're getting at that location, fiber or cable. Cable are more prominent, but fibers, they are good for reliable and they have good upload and download speeds, but it comes at a cost. So you have to know what kind of network are you getting. You really have to ask, do you have a LAN or Wi-Fi? Because that can change things. If you have a LAN, then I would highly recommend converting that LAN into a mini Wi-Fi for yourself so that it's so that you and your club members, they can join that Wi-Fi. If you have a Wi-Fi, then you have to ensure, are there any upload and download limitations? How many clients can connect to that Wi-Fi? Determine the internet speed at that location because it's really important. Again, there are multiple tools to help you do that. They're all free. Generally, speed test from Ookla. That's a good way. Also, you will need to know the internet speed because Zoom has its own bandwidth requirements, depending upon if you're streaming or not, depending upon your webinar, if you're doing screen sharing. So you need to know what's your internet speed. Find out the signal strength. As I said, there are dead zones in your room. So find out the signal strength. Now, signal strength is measured in dBAMs, which is decibel milliwatts, ranging from -30 to -90. So as long as you're getting between -30, -40, -50, that's fine. You don't have to get a signal strength meter, but you can get a very good idea from your Mac or your Windows and how good of strength is. Then again, if you have a LAN, or if you want a more close Wi-Fi, then you need a mobile router also. And this is the same mobile router that I used to take when I used to go to the hotels, so that I convert the hotel LAN into a mini Wi-Fi. So this is the essential equipment. Again, major equipment is laptop. I would encourage one of you just to get laptop from one of your members, so that you don't have to spend money on it. Phone, I recommend, because I prefer having two views, one for the lectern, one camera that's focusing on the lectern, and one that's focused on the member area. And that's what the phones are for. Hubs and router are optional. Then we have essential equipment as webcams. You can easily get any 4K webcam for really cheap these days. Get a projector or TV so that you can connect it. Everyone in the room can see who has joined you on Zoom. If you're getting a projector, get a projector screen as well. Get a good microphone, because unless your laptop is at lectern, you would need a microphone. So at the lectern, get good speakers. Again, Bluetooth, auxiliary, no matter, but get good speakers so that everyone in the room can hear everyone from the Zoom. And again, audio mixers, they are an overkill, but I know some of the clubs, they also do that. Then again, some miscellaneous stuff. If you have a phone, get a tripod. You can get cables like an HDMI cable, network cable, charging cable, etc. And these are approximate prices. And again, you don't have to get the high-end equipment. You all depend upon how much budget you have. But again, as I said, your club can go into a hybrid mode for as low as $200. Get a laptop phone from one of your members. Mobile routers, $40. Webcam, Logitech 4K webcam is for like $130 these days. That's a really good. Get projectors. Projector screen is again really cheap. So these are approximate prices, and again, you don't have to get the really high-end stuff. Generally, and that's pretty much it. But if you attend one of my hybrid sessions, I also show sample locations, so where the lectern should be, where you can place the cameras, where you can place the laptops, etc. But that's for a separate discussion. Thank you.
Good deal. Thank you, Ruchin. We'll do questions at the end, so we can have all of our presenters in case your question gets answered by one of our speakers. We're going to move from, now that we have our equipment, we understand our connectivity, we have a location. How do we set this stuff up? What do we do with it logistically? So our next speaker is Darren Ng, and he is currently the district director for District 100, and he loves all things related to technology. He believes that hybrid meetings really can help everyone, and loves being able to share the best practices that he's learned so far over the last year or so. And so Darren was really instrumental in navigating the logistical setup that we needed to do and testing the layout and the equipment when we had our big testing session before the meeting. And so he is a critical piece of our transition to the hybrid format. So please welcome Darren Ng.
Thank you, Giovanna, for that wonderful introduction. And good afternoon, everyone, or good day, as I heard from earlier today. I'm sharing my screen, and hopefully you can see it. I also included my email address in case you want to contact me for more details after our discussion today. But what I want to talk about specifically is you have your room, you have your equipment, how do we set it up? And what I like to use is to keep things really simple. What that means is that S stands for seamless. The technology that you use within your meeting should be integrated with your meeting room itself. There shouldn't be wires running all around where members and the presenter are tripping all over. So you really need to make it seamless. It's there, people can take advantage of it without getting in the way. The I means inclusive. And for any hybrid meeting that we have, we really need to make our online members and our in-person members feel like they're all one part of a meeting or one meeting. It has to be equitable to everybody. People are sharing the same experience. It doesn't matter if you're on hybrid or you're in person, and the layout of the room would play a big role into that. Second or third is members first. Make sure you take, when you're laying out the room, the accommodations of your members. Some people might need to have the screen in a particular position. Everybody should be able to see each other online or in person. Put your members' needs first. Next, we have placement, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about that. All the equipment, wonderful equipment that Ruchin mentioned. Where do you place it to get the most efficiency out of it? Next is, did you lay out and test your equipment beforehand? With anything like technology, there are always possibilities that things will not go right for you. What is your plan B? Who's going to handle it and troubleshoot that while the meeting is going on? Because obviously you do not want to stop your meeting if things are happening. Have that all laid out, tested beforehand, and make sure that the appropriate people know how things work. Lastly is everything easy to manage? You're going to be setting this up potentially for every meeting, unless you have a location that just allows you to plug in your computer and get off and running with it. Is your setup easy to manage? One of the things I like to just mention is that your setup is going to be custom to your location, to your meeting needs, and to your club. So not any one club will have the exact same setup. Make it work for you and make it work for your members. So the very basic thing you need for your logistics and setting things up is just really one laptop computer. You could place it at your table. It shows the audience, or as much of the audience as possible. And the person who's presenting is in the front. People could see the presenter and the audience itself. There are problems with this. Your microphone might not catch everything that's going on in the room, especially if it's far away from the presenter, and it might not catch the audience itself, and the speakers on your computer might not be as powerful where everybody could hear the online audience as, I would say, as loud as they need to be. So this is your very basic one. To add on to it, depending on what your budget is and what equipment you do have, I would suggest getting, oh, before I do that, if you have this one laptop and you have the presentation screens there, make sure your presentation area is marked so that the people in the front that are presenting know when they go out of camera and when they're in camera. That way, the folks online always see the presenter. If you have more equipment, I would recommend getting the room mic, as Ruchin mentioned, so that everybody could hear the presenter better. If you only have one mic, put it closer to the presenter, him or herself, so that you could hear what is being said and what is being talked about. If you have more stuff, get a room speaker. The room speaker is more quality than your laptop speaker. Everybody could hear the folks online, especially if they're talking in table topics or if they're giving a speech. That way, everybody could have a good experience when it comes to listening on what's being said. Next, remember, this is all custom. So use whatever equipment you have. I'm always adding onto it, depending if you have this equipment or not. Looking at a laptop screen from far away, especially if you're a presenter, could be quite hard. You don't know who's speaking. Is everybody in the room able to see the laptop speaker or the online speaker? If you have a chance to get a large room TV or a projector, that would make it easy for everybody to see the online members. And that's very important because you want to include them in your meeting. In addition, if you have another camera, you could have an external camera that's run through the laptop that captures a wider angle, wider audience angle, and also the presenter itself. And not only that, you could actually turn the camera around where there's one person who's sort of like your in-room Zoom master that takes care and can manage all this technology and chat with the folks online. In this particular case, it's the orange guy with the glasses. The presenter sees the audience on the screen, and the in-room Zoom Master could control the conversation, make sure that our Zoom or online folks are having a great experience. So this is the setup that I have right now. If you have another computer, which would be awesome, is that you could go ahead and put a computer on the lectern and use the camera and microphone on the lectern itself. That way, the audience could see a close-up view of who's presenting. They could hear the presenter a lot clearer, and the presenter could see the online audience a lot clearer also. But you do need 2 laptops for that. If you have additional camera and another microphone, you can move it to the lectern, have the second computer be managed by a second individual, and they could go ahead and coordinate so that the presenter doesn't need to manage which microphone they're using, which if the camera is looking okay, and so on. So as I said, this builds on one another when it comes to the equipment that you do have, right? So use whatever setup that works for you and try to lay it out in a way so that your audience gets the most out of your equipment and of your meeting, so that if you're online or in person, it's a great experience for everybody. One of the things, lastly, I just would like to mention is that in this particular setup, one of the things I noticed is that if people are presenting online, the audience members has to look in a different direction than up front where the presenter is. So you see a lot of necks turning from the lectern to the TV to the lectern and so on. Some setups I've seen move the TV or the presentation to the side of the presenter so that everybody is up front, so the audience could see both the online and presenter at the same time. But that's really up to your club if you really want to do this. Club 407, as Giovanna mentioned earlier, uses this particular format, and it's worked well for them. So this is hopefully giving you a little bit of an idea on how to lay out your equipment and how to get everything up and running for a really fun and exciting hybrid meeting. Back to you, Giovanna.
Good deal. Thanks so much, Darren. All right, now that we have that, we have our equipment and connectivity, we've got it laid out. Now we need some people to do some things. So we're going to move into meeting programming. And our third panelist, Julie Brody, is the Club 407 illustrious VPE, a very critical role in the process. And she is charged with this component in ensuring that those who participate on the meeting agenda can successfully navigate both in person and our remote participants. Because knowing where someone will physically be located can greatly have an impact on the meeting experience as well as in-person attendance. So to get us to this point, she was also an extension of our Sergeant at Arms team, and she did the research for more than 11 venues and successfully negotiated the venue contract that kept the price to only an $8 increase during a very high inflation period last year. She's the club's liaison to the hotel and works with them monthly to ensure we have delicious dinners, as well as that the hotel maintains their contractual obligations with ensuring our headcount and that all of our equipment continues to be free. So please welcome Julie Brody. She's going to talk with us about our meeting planning.
Thank you, Giovanna. And hello, everyone. Happy to be here in Founders. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. This is a cool infographic that Toastmasters International, you might have seen it, has used it in the past for when they are presenting how to start a new club in Toastmasters. I'm using it today for us to look at the hybrid meeting cycle for meeting programming. And I've tried to keep things organized for everyone. It's the who, what, which, how, where, and follow-up. That's what we're going to cover in just a short few minutes right now. So quickly, as we go through our wheel here, who are the in-person versus remote participants? We're going to cover what duplicate roles are needed, which roles are best filled in person or remote, how a remote table topics master is informed of the in-person attendees, where is the attention focus during any break periods that your clubs are having, and how should you follow up at officer meetings? All right, so let's get started. When we look at the meeting programming, what you'll notice on our very first item we just talked about was who are the in-person versus remote participants. It's really important that your club has a system to monitor this. For an example, in Club 407, my job as the VPE, when I am assigning roles, I find out right away, will you be here in person or will you be online? We don't hold it to chance. We ask well before the meeting so that if someone would like to come in person, they can plan for that commute from wherever they're going. Giovanna mentioned it takes her about an hour to get to our meeting. It takes me about the same. It's probably, I think it's 42 miles one way to get to our meeting. So it really having people plan for what they will be doing that day. So, and then we know in advance also for our hotel count for 18 people minimum, are we going to meet the hotel count before the meeting happens? So knowing well in advance. And so how do we know that too? We set up a system so that when people are registering, they will be telling us online exactly whether they're in person or remote right up front when they're RSVPing. So that's one way that we have a very clear system. We also need to know what duplicate roles are needed. You might have noticed if you've already done a hybrid meeting that sometimes you'll have the timer waving the little cards in person, and then the people remote have no idea what the timing restraints are at that time. Are we on the yellow or are we on the red? So an example is if you have an in-person timer, find out will there be cards in the room as well as will there be colored backgrounds remotely? How will that be handled? Well, and one idea that you could use is to, if that timer is actually in person, they could bring their laptop. They could make sure that they have the timing cards displayed behind them on their laptop and that it can be shown in the room publicly on a screen. And that's what we do in our Club 407 meetings. Another example is Sergeant at Arms. So if your Sergeant at Arms is on Zoom, how are we making sure that the people in the room that need props are being addressed appropriately? So make sure there's a Sergeant at Arms team. We talk about teams all the time. In a hybrid situation, it's more critical than ever to have teams. Another important thing that we need to be looking at is which roles are best filled in person versus remote. If you have an amazing speaker that's coming and they aren't far away from where your meeting location is, almost beg if you need to get them in person, because who doesn't want to rub elbows with that amazing dignitary or keynote or speaker? Who doesn't want to leave their mark with that person? So if some of those key individuals that you might be inviting, see if you can get them in person if possible, but also look at things like maybe your Toastmaster. Depending on the type of meeting that you're putting on, if it's a special meeting or if it's a special topic for a normal meeting, might it be more appropriate for your Toastmaster to be in person? I know in our Club 407 environment, so far we've had our Toastmasters be in person and it has worked really well for us. But you also want to not discount the aspect of the remote. When you are filling roles in your club setting, you want to have an appropriate mixture of in-person and remote participants that are on the agenda. There should never be anything that's one-sided so that someone feels like they are neglected in either situation. So remember that as you're filling roles in the club environment. So how will a remote table topics master be informed of in-person attendees? Make sure you think about that well in advance. So will it be a sergeant at arms extended committee that is able to send a chat to the table topics master and let them know these are the people, the members that are here in person, and these are the guests if you so choose to call upon a guest for table topics. Just have that system in place in advance, and that way, some of you might have experienced this so far, that way you can avoid a remote table topics master during their session saying, who's there? I can't see. Who's in the room? I mean, ouch, right? It kind of disrupts the flow of the meeting. So again, this speaks to the importance of team. Have your sergeant at arms as a recommendation. Have a member of their team to inform the remote table topics master. Another thing we should be looking at is where is attention focused during break periods. If, as an example, our club, before we call to order, we actually have dinner served 15 minutes before we call to order. And we have dabbled with a few things in the last few months. One item that worked really well just recently was our vice president of membership was remote. And that person was able to conduct their own little mini table topics in the remote session before the meeting even was called to order. So he kept the enthusiasm and the excitement going for those in the background. And that's past international director, Greg Scott. It was amazing. So the people that were remote felt like they were just as included as the people in person that were gathering their dinner plates. So remember that. What will be done during the break periods to handle the in-person and the remote people? Lastly, follow up at officer meetings. We know your officer meetings are monthly, that's a given, but is this an agenda item to review how did the last hybrid meeting go, and where can we do better? What are the lessons learned? At 407, we're constantly at the direction of Giovanna. She's an amazing president. We are really always tweaking. How can we do better to make sure the member experience is improving in both the in-person world and the Zoom environment? So think about it, add that to your agendas for your officer meetings. What I wanted to do is give you a little piece, and we'll hand this off to our Founders District team, but I wanted to give you an idea of some things I talked about. And if you wanted to duplicate this graphic just to print out and have it, the who, what, which, how, where follow-up for each of your meetings. I just put a few of the ideas that we talked about here today already pre-filled for you, but feel free to use the same type of system as almost a checklist to make sure that you have all of those items completely thought in advance as you are designating the meeting programming. I hope you have an amazing, amazing hybrid meeting season. Back to you, Madam President.
Good deal. Thank you, Julie. Clearly, I pay you well. So let's moving on. So let's bring it home with execution. How do we put all this together? It's going to be a little bit of a crash course to try and get some of your questions. And Christine Brady is going to bring it home for us. And she serves as the Club 407 secretary and has served in just about every role at the club and district level. And her experience with hybrids meetings has really helped us during our countless planning meetings that we needed to have in order to support that successful transition. She works for a national transportation analytics and engineering firm as a contracts manager, and she handles complex contract negotiations with city, county, and state agencies. And in her free time, if there is such a thing, in her free time, Christine is a co-creator of the podcast, Currently Obsessed, a podcast about everything, because everything is obsessible. So tell us, Christine, how do we execute our hybrid meeting?
Thank you, Giovanna. Well, the first thing, making sure that if it's possible to have a test meeting. You want to test the placement of all of your equipment, test that you can hear everybody, and test that, this testing for eventualities, I guess, is the best way. When we first did our first test meeting, I was online, but my intention was to be in person at the actual meeting. So I had the unique experience of being able to offer some tips and tricks on things that we needed to improve when we were in the room so that people online could understand what was happening during the meeting. And then to see those executed live at the meeting a few days later. One of the first things to make sure always is to make sure that you're speaking so that your remote participants feel included. What does that mean? Well, it means to speak to the camera. As you saw in some of Darren's slides, this audience will not always be in front of you if you're standing at the lectern. So it's very, very important that you don't turn your back to your in-person audience to talk to the people on the screen. Remember, sometimes the screen is not the camera, it's just the faces, right? So it's so important to make sure you're always facing the camera. That is where the person in the room that is monitoring the chat can help you. If you're the speaker, they can just give you some idea that maybe there's some chatter going on that maybe they can't hear you. So the meeting just needs to pause. So make sure that you are in constant communication with those people in the room. Again, Julie mentioned having that sergeant at arms in the room and then one to monitor the virtual environment. One thing that we do, not in Club 407, but another club that I'm in, the sergeant at arms that's online will gather all of the votes for best speaker, best evaluator, best table topics. And if we have a vote counter in the room, they need to coordinate so that all the votes are coordinated and brought together. It doesn't matter who sends the votes to whom, but we just need to make sure that they're accounted for. The other thing is to make sure that your sergeant at arms works with the VPE to know who will need sharing access. Not all of your speakers will be live. They need to understand if any speaker is online, if they need to share their screen. It's really super important. Another thing to think about, you have a speaker that's online, but you also have a camera at your lectern. What do you do with that speaking area after you introduce the virtual speaker? Do you turn the camera off? Do you maybe just slide your camera cover over just so that you now just see that virtual background, just to create less of a distraction? That's just one thing to consider. Sometimes it's distracting to people that are in the online room if they have a Zoom box with a person missing. So just something to think about. But if you turn that camera off, you have to remember that the next person that goes up to the lectern has to turn it back on. And that might not be something you want to deal with toggling on and off. The most important part is to have fun. That is hands down the most important part, especially when you're setting up the meeting. There are going to be guests who show up early. And if you are in there and you're frazzled and just look like you're having the worst time ever, none of those people that are in the room are going to want to serve on the executive committee the next year to take over that job, because that looks hard. So make sure that you keep it together. You look like you're having a great time. Remember, our Toastmasters training trains us to handle things like technology not working without sweating it. So don't worry too much. It'll all work out. Back to you, Giovanna.
Thank you. Well done, crash course to get us back on time. Thanks so much, Christine. So we're coming up on time. I don't know if we have any leeway for a little bit over, because I know the next session doesn't start for 10 minutes after ours. But what question?
Have too much leeway. We could do like 5 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So let's get to it. Greg's hand is up. Greg, hi. Thank you for going first. What's on your mind?
This is, we've been doing hybrids ever since we were able to meet in person again. And one of the things I found that is kind of problematic is when you have humor in a speech, which is very important, but you don't necessarily have people laughing unless you're in person in that group, but in the Zoom part, especially if they are not showing their face, their mics aren't on, which is normal etiquette for a typical online meeting. How do you guys handle that? Do you really encourage, if not mandate, people to have their faces showing, so those expressions, facial expressions are there, and mics off, so you could at least hear the laughter or clapping. I'm just wondering.
We currently don't have any mandates asking anyone to keep their video on or go off mute. Every now and then you'll see me in particular as the president when we are acknowledging our Toastmaster at the end of the meeting. I do invite our remote participants to take themselves off mute, so that way the Toastmaster can hear as much as we can. But currently we don't have anything that says you must be on video or take yourself off mute.
Okay, anybody else have any ideas on that?
If there are any other thoughts, feel free to shoot a chat to Greg with it.
Okay.
I just
I
want to
think
see.
it really
if we-
depends on your club culture. Like, did you turn your videos on to begin with when you were 100% online? Then yeah, you turn your video on.
Yeah.
But if nobody turned their video on to begin with, then maybe you don't turn your video on. So I think it kind of depends on your club culture.
Yeah, I guess we always had our video on in our club.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's really nice. What other questions are out there? Any other thoughts? Was there anything new information that you learned, or maybe something you hadn't thought of, either as currently hybrid meetingers or considering it? David, I see your hand up. What came up for you?
Quick follow-up on something Christine said about having a test meeting. And I know earlier it was mentioned, have a backup plan. It's a good idea to test the backup plan. We ran into a situation recently where it was our second hybrid meeting and the person with the equipment couldn't make it. So it was a mad scramble to put together the backup plan. It would be a good idea if we had tested that at a meeting beforehand.
Got it. Thank you for that. AJ, I think I saw your hand.
Yes, I wanted to thank Darren for his ability to take something really complex and give it to us in such a way that we could embrace it. I could see the room as he changed his setups and added more and more. Well done, Darren. I would also appreciate that list from Ruchin with actual listings of items. I've already personally spent $500 plus that I don't have in hybrid equipment to take care of the requirements that I'm being placed under. And if I could have saved $1, I would really appreciate it. So if you can give us a detailed list of where all those cheapo things are, just the HDMI cable wound up costing me $35.
Richard, you're good to send that. One of the things we've entertained in my other club that I belong to as well as Club 407 is just doing something special that you could raffle off or opportunity drawing off. Maybe you have an intimate time with a guest speaker, or you get some free goodies that you can raffle off, and people can purchase the tickets, and then you can use that money toward buying the equipment if the club has voted on buying equipment. There's something psychological in consumer behavior that says, I'm willing to buy those raffle tickets, and they'll probably buy more than if you increased dues, right? Like there's something psychological about, I got to pay an extra $1 every 6 months versus, hey, I'll give you $10 for raffle tickets. And they probably are actually paying more than they would in the dues in some cases, just, consumer behavior type of deal. But you shouldn't be expected. And I have several of my executive committee members here will back me up on this when I say no member should be expected to pay their own money to do this. We have members, we have a budget, we have dues, we have voting, we have different ways that we can fund things because it's a collective piece. And if you're doing it all yourself, that means you may not have buy-in and it's not sustainable. So we're looking for sustainability, long-term picture, not immediate gratification. So I see a hand and a red card. So is the hand to underscore that we're at the red, Julie, or do you have a question?
Yes, because I was told some people couldn't see the timing, so I wanted to make sure you could see.
Now that it's over now? Okay, got it. So we're wrapping up here. Any final thoughts, questions, concerns? Because we're going to get booted.
Giovanna,
I think that Julie's going to post the slide deck on the chat.
Okay, awesome.
I
Yeah,
think,
I'll
yeah,
put this on the
okay.
screen while we wait here. You guys can
All
take a
right.
screenshot. Here's contact
Okay.
information if you want to connect with anyone after the meeting for additional information. But until then, I hope you got some good nuggets and we got to spend some time together for the afternoon. Stay safe and dry. If you're in SoCal, it's pouring buckets all day today. And I have a funeral to go to after this. So stay safe.
We'll also drop the survey link for everybody, which will also, as we close
Thank
out.
you to the panel too. That was a wonderful job.
Yes,
and
thank you to
quite a
our
challenge to
amazing
get-
panel today.
Oh, yeah.
It is not pasting today.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much.
But it will also, as we close, you will also get the session link. Or it looks like we lost our room monitor. But thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. We very much appreciate it. We'll send out the handout, the presentation via email. So be on the lookout for that. We have an amazing workshop plan next for Christine Brady's podcast session. So we're going to close this out. And then we also, at the end of the day, will be wrapping up with a pathway session. So don't miss out on our next sessions, and we will see everybody again very, very soon. Thank you so much.